Welcome once again after hiatus to the Sona PC Podcast with Rob Adomus on YouTube and www.sonapcpodcast.com, the website. I have to say, folks, that like probably all of you who are going to be watching this show, I was pretty ticked off at the fact that we had this so-called lockdown. And when I was looking at what to talk about once we got back up and running here, I went through a plethora of subjects, and I realized something that was happening with all of them, is that they're all interrelated. Whether they were just in Canada, whether they were just in the US, there's spillover all the time with all of this. So I thought the best way to describe what's going on, which most of you probably already know on a daily basis when you watch social media and obviously stay away from fake news, the best way that I thought that I would go about this, and I want to say this, happy July 1st Canada Day to all my Canadian patriot friends out there, family members, and happy July 4th Independence Day to all my friends and family all across the United States. It's quite ironic to be doing this show right in the midst of the birthdays of the two countries, because what's been going on, as you all know, with BLM and Antifa, setting up autonomous zones in Seattle and attempting it in other demon rat-infested party cities down in the States. You get the spillover here in Canada, especially a place like Toronto, where John Tory, whose last name is very inappropriate because he's a liberal, are holding these so-called protests amongst the so-called pandemic, which we know never actually happened. Statistics show, and I actually put out on social media, I think about 3 weeks ago, a chart. And it showed all of the different illnesses that people die from around the world, how many per day. Well, tuberculosis was number one with over 2,000 a day. The so-called COVID-19 coronavirus is way down here. It's at 56. Now, we know those numbers are skewed higher because of the fact that everything has been categorized, meaning undiagnosed, the deaths throughout North America, under that category. And especially within the States, where it's a for-profit system for the most part, hospitals were getting $39,000 to categorize a death under the coronavirus, as opposed to $13,000 for what they were actually passing away with. Now, the average age of those folks passing away from COVID-19 was 83. Pre-existing conditions, of course. And it's well established, documented, that the regular flu, which we do not lock down society for, killed more people than the so-called coronavirus. Now, we know that this is a gigantic hoax which originated in China. And here's how I'm going to bring all of this together, folks. I know, for those of you who have loyally watched my show, and I want to say I'm so humbled. Thank you for continuing to watch the show since its inception just under 2 years ago. I honestly thought with the hiatus that we were put under, because my friends and I couldn't get together in order to do any shows for you, that literally the subscriber base would start to dwindle. Shove it, YouTube, because Mr. Shadow Banning Company tried to bury the show. And interestingly enough, our subscriber base went up without a new show in almost 4 months. So I can't thank you all enough for that. It tells me that as much as I get quite upset with the majority of Canada who follows fake news media and has such a unawakened attitude, really leftist in a lot of ways, unlike the States, which is very awake to what's going on, and huge Trump supporters, as they should be, because there's a leader in that country that cares about its citizens, unlike who we know, Mr. Justin Trudeau. And I will have another show that I will be doing following this one in regards to, and I'll just kind of preface it for now. Norman Traversy, the ex-firefighter, has a mountain of evidence that is indictable evidence against Justin Trudeau and many other Liberal Party members. So I'm going to do an entire show on that. So stay tuned for that one, because that will be coming up. But this thing around the pandemic hoax, initiated in China, well, some years back, a lot of people were talking to me about Russia being the mortal enemy. And back in the Cold War days, that may have been the truth, but that is not the truth today. We know China owns everything, literally, in North America, from Hollywood, where all the pedophiles and Satan worshipers hang out. They own more industry than people would ever begin to count. That is in the US and Canada. And they fully control the Democrat Party, and certainly many Republicans too, who are the ones, as we call rhinos, fighting against President Trump. So they are just literally Democrats in Republican disguise. So as time has been going on, these individuals are showing themselves more and more being exposed to the point that they will implode. And speaking of which, another interesting event that came about, which will actually speak to those political parties, is the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's so-called right-hand man. And the FBI really knew where she was all this time. And with the mountain of evidence against her, finally, they had to get rid of a certain individual there, that a lawyer, so that President Trump and Attorney General Bill Barr could move forward with indictments against this so-called client list, which has more prominent names than people are going to care to count. So that said, that should be interesting to see what comes out of it. I always hold a lot of hope and optimism that indictments do come down and that many individuals will be arrested, if not hung for treason down there. Certainly like to have that up here, because we know a certain party and its so-called leader, and I hate to use that word because it makes me choke, should be hung for treason as well, if we had that here. And perhaps maybe I should, run in the next election and maybe become the party leader, and I can institute that and turn Canada into a republic and not be under the thumb of the fake royals. So with all that said, there's a lot of information, and I felt maybe the best way to go about this, besides what it is you folks are going in on a regular basis, the websites, to take a look at, what I will do is I'm just going to take a lot of the individuals that I speak to, their websites, in order to gather the information as opposed to going through this, because I could do many stories just on Black Lives Matter and its inception in 2013, and it was started by 3 African American ladies who happen to belong to the Black Skull and Bones Society. They are the propaganda and violence arm of Antifa, all funded by somebody we know very, very well, unfortunately, somebody by the name of George Soros and his son Alexander. So for those of you, that's just more tidbits that I'm sure that you already know. And we are going to continue to see the evolution, or possibly the so-called Clinton suicide of Ghislaine Maxwell here shortly. Just like Jeffrey Epstein, no, he didn't kill himself, but be sure if they put her into some kind of cell somewhere that typically will have security equipment, don't be surprised if that equipment just all of a sudden suddenly just doesn't work any longer, and guards and whomever they put on her detail suddenly go off for coffee for about 8 hours. Wow, that's a heck of a pension plan with that one. Wow. Okay, I wish I had that one. So, a lot of things that I had kind of made as notes, and I know if I go too far with this, you guys will probably just kind of fall asleep with it all, and I know I would. So I will put that into the body of this particular video for you guys to go to those links, look into it. You know what I've always said since day one, and that is do your own research. And as much as all of our information is 100% verified, confirmed from multiple sources, because I never want anything but truth for you all. And that's what I will always give you. That's what this show is about. It has nothing to do with me and my friends who put this together. This is all for you. This is for patriots. This is for awakening those who are not yet awake. You know, to share the videos and give me the feedback to hear what you want to hear. And I'll be more than happy to look into those subjects and research them out and then do a story on those. That's what it is. This is all about us. This is all about the citizens of Canada and the US taking our country back, which we know is being taken over, if we allow it to, by the globalist agenda. Because the BLMs, the Antifas, political parties, they are just puppets. Really just puppets in a very large game of very wealthy families. Typically there's 13 that rule the world, 9 which sit as the Knights of the Round Table. Okay? And you know, some of those names you're going to know, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs, Oppenheimers, the Lee of Hong Kong, the Bilderbergs, the Habsburgs. Really, that's kind of more the lineage and along the lines of the so-called royal family. Their name is not Windsor and such. And I'm going to put a video very specific to what I would call the coming destruction of Black Lives Matter. And there's a gentleman by the name of Bishop Larry Gators, who I've just become familiar with in the last few days. And I've actually reached out to him. He has a radio talk show that's syndicated around the world. And I hope to get him on the show. Very knowledgeable man in regards to how Black Lives Matter came to be and how its inner workings are satanic based. And all the individuals from the inception to back to the voodoo days to the inception of where Africa was not the original name of Africa. It was something else. And on it goes. Very fascinating stuff. So I'll leave it to the so-called experts to explain that to you. That particular video is about 50 minutes long, so not long. And I just want to come back to the fact that July 1st for Canada and July 4th for the States, and our independence, our freedoms, which they've been taking away and dwindling for years now. And I know President Trump is doing all he can with what he can do, and what he's done in almost 4 years against an establishment that has been so entrenched for literally thousands of years. Not just decades, thousands of years. It's very difficult, and one man cannot do it alone. It takes a city, as I call it. It takes a nation to have the faith, to have the strength, to have the wherewithal to understand it is not one person in all of this. It's an entire nation working together, doing their little parts in order to bring together a collective. Now, in some of my shows, I've used that word very specifically because the word collective means something. We create something together, working towards really a common goal. And in this case, it's our lives at stake. And I don't think anybody should ever take that lightly, because I certainly don't. Now, this show is just one small outlet of a voice. You all have voices. When you speak one-on-one to somebody, if you speak to your MP or you talk to a senator, whomever it is you talk to, you create. And something that seems to be very, very much in short supply, in my view, for a while has been a lack of faith. Like, you know, even if we try something, what is it going to matter? Trust me, it matters. So I put my faith in you that we can all work together, our small parts, in order to make something big happen. And whether you believe or not in miracles, I do. So that's what we need to work towards, because inevitably, whether you read the Bible or not, it's your choice. That's one of the freedoms that you have, your free will that you've been given by the Lord Almighty. Again, whether you believe that or not. But you can choose to sit back and do nothing and get walked on, or you can choose to move forward with a bunch of like-minded, like-hearted, like-souled people and take back a countries, like some other countries are doing. They're standing up and they're winning. Because we resonate at a frequency that's up here on positivity. Evil, negative, down here. You get to choose what you want to do and what you want to be. So, I'll leave that with you. And I always like to end off every show literally with not so much a prayer, but it's my extension to you, that with that faith that I have in you as an individual and as groups and as a nation, may God be with you and your family in all things.